Welcome to Truth and Reckoning, a broadcast from CELDF. In this show, we'll learn from frontline organizers and communities fighting against environmental destruction. We'll explore different perspectives and innovative strategies for movement building, the potency and the potential of rights of nature, and effective action in defense of our communities. And we'll share inspiring stories of people working towards right relationship with the land and each other. I am your host, Max Wilbert. Today we have a special episode for you. We're bringing you two interviews. The first is conducted by Kai Hushka, CELDF's executive director, and is with Denzel Caldwell. Caldwell is part of the Black Nashville Assembly and works for the Highlander Center, a movement training school based in Tennessee. The second interview is conducted by me and it's with Jassim Guila. Jassim lives in the Philippines, what they call the archipelago using decolonized terminology, and he's part of various grassroots networks of resistance, environmental protection, and mutual aid. Ja is also the organizing director with Blue Earth Defense, an international radical environmental organization. Our conversations for this episode focus on the topic of state repression, vigilante violence, and other forms of authoritarianism and fascism facing our movements and our communities. We're bringing their voices to you now as a preview for our upcoming special event, scheduled for Monday, July 21st at 6 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 7 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Central, and 9 p.m. Eastern. We're holding the event at that time because for this event, Denzel, Jassim, Kai, and myself will be joined by several other speakers from the Philippines, the archipelago. The title of the event is Solidarity Against Tyranny, Frontline Resistance Insights from the Philippines and the Appalachian South, and it's free and open to the public. There are 3 ways to join us for this event. First, you can tune in on the CELDF YouTube channel. Second, you can find the event on our Facebook page. There's a Facebook event there now that you can RSVP to and share with your friends if you're on Facebook. And third, you can watch directly through Zoom. The advantage of joining in this manner is that you'll be able to submit questions for the Q&A, so I'd encourage you to join us in that way. There's a registration link that we'll share in the description of this podcast and video, so please take a moment now to register. Without further ado, here's today's show.
So my name is Denzel Caldwell. I am born, raised, currently organizing in Nashville, Tennessee. My political home, or the primary space of organizing, is with the Black Nashville Assembly. We're a localized people's movement assembly formation, organizing working class Black folks in the Nashville area to build our own political agendas, engage in collective governance with ourselves, and as well as co-governance with the current structure in order to build independent political platforms and get our needs met, kind of as an exercise for further sort of collective governance structures that we want to build out in the future. In addition to that, I'm also on the education team with Highlander Center, focusing on anything around collective governance or solidarity economy. So that could be workshops with folks, particularly in the South, U.S. South, and in some instances, the global South. But any workshops, any sort of forms of accompaniment that require building folks' solidarity economy projects or helping them understand conceptually what it looks like to practice in solidarity economy, I do that work. Alongside that, I also do work around civic education, both in the formal sense, but also in the more critical sense, as I like to call it, where we're getting folks not only to understand how these current power structures work, but how do we utilize collective governance in order to build grassroots democracies that could one day replace these current structures. So
Fantastic. So as you've been doing your work, as you are doing your work, as you're kind of looking at the current realities, obviously trying to gauge what's coming down the road to more fully manifest everything that you just described. What is that picture right now? How would you paint the picture in the areas that you're working around the political situation, especially in the arenas of environmental and human rights organizing? Like what does that look like? And sort of tied to that, what are the kind of more serious threats or impediments that you're having to face, and what do those look like, and how do you manage all of that through the work you're trying to do?
Yeah. So I mean, I think a good way to sort of capture this, and when I speak here, I'm thinking about the U.S. Southeast, and as a region. What we're experiencing now, particularly as it relates to this political moment, is really just sort of an intensification of what we've already been experiencing as a region. So if we understand like the U.S. South is sort of like the stronghold for what some may call the neo-Confederacy, a lot of what we're seeing in this political moment at a federal level has definitely been happening at the regional level in the U.S. Southeast, but we're in a moment particularly where that is worsening, right? So whether we're talking about climate disasters that are happening, that are hitting the Southeast in rural areas, predominantly Black or Latina populations or poor white populations, they're being struck disproportionately in ways that render them entirely vulnerable. We can look no further than Asheville, North Carolina, and the ways in which they were literally cut off from the world after, I believe, Hurricane Helene, and some of the aftermath of that. We also have, alongside that, the rolling back of, along with climate disaster comes, or increased climate disaster, comes the further dilapidation of infrastructure. So bridges that were already crumbling are crumbling faster. Areas that may not have been prone to flooding, or at least not for at least a certain period of time, are experiencing historic flooding or historic weather events that normally would happen every 50 to 100 years. Parallel to that, I would say that a lot of because of the sort of current federal regime, a lot of the rollbacks for social safety nets and sort of public infrastructure that really was holding on to a hanging thread are being removed, whether we're talking about EPA regulations, sort of like tax breaks for major corporations to further violate the environment or exploit the environment at the cost of human lives, whether it be increasing cancer rates or decreasing quality of air. And yeah, just with these rollbacks, we're also seeing state sanctioned violence in other ways. So, like, whether we're talking about the massive ICE raids that, although they're happening nationally, are definitely happening here in a very intense way in the South. Whether we're talking about the violations of human rights that trans folks are experiencing by the removal of gender affirming care in various cities and towns throughout the South. We're seeing those being dismantled, reproductive access for folks with uteri, who, again, depending on where they were living, well, for the most part, here in the South, there have been major battles for even access, let alone that right. And so those are being rolled back in various ways, whether on the state or local level, with the backing of the federal regime. So, and then I think last, it's important to note there's a lot of reactionary forces down here that are organized. So that we're talking about Proud Boys, sort of various white supremacist groups, or paramilitary organizations. Tennessee has quite a few, Patriot Front, et cetera, et cetera. We see that type of organizing that exists throughout the South, and definitely concentrated in some ways here. And so in response to all of that, the biggest thing has been people's movement assemblies have been helpful in communities such as my own, for example, in strengthening their governance muscles to make collective decisions around how to respond to various emergencies, and then how to put pressure on local forces to provide some needs that they may not be able to immediately procure. But it also provides an apparatus for folks to organize themselves to create the mutual aid networks that they need in order to address more immediate needs and build infrastructure that would go outside of sort of your normal political institutions. So we have a lot of mutual aid support, a lot of various forms of community defense, just like finding ways to support people to navigate ICE crackdowns or sort of ICE harassment or snatchings, direct actions, things like that. I would say those are the two sort of major categories of responses that we're seeing in different pockets throughout the South. And one thing I can say is that, it's one of the things that I'm seeing is that there's more of an intention to create networks throughout different states and throughout the region so that folks can work more closely together in order to deal with some of these worsening issues.
Can you focus in a little bit more on just either the actual methods being employed or the things that are being talked about or taught or people are trained around kind of the community defense side of things? I know obviously historically it's always been a heavily violent area of the country against those who are justifiably looking to eradicate the injustices of the system, and whether it's the state sanctioned stuff you were talking about or the emboldening of supremacists to sort of, take up the flag based on the actions of the government itself. What maybe in a little more detail, what does that look like to keep people safe, to keep communities safe? What have you seen? What are you involved in? What have you heard about that people are doing to keep that safety going in order to do that good evolution work that you spoke of around transitioning out of where we're at into really where we need to be going?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I've observed and really heard of in different forms is just intentional skill sharing, both at the local level, but also in some instances across states, where you have different folks who are part of different communities, organizations, some types of formations that are getting together and they're saying, hey, we all shared a certain amount of various emergencies and crises that we're dealing with. What are some of we know that there are some essential skills that we'll need to learn. We need to learn Stop the Bleed, for example, or various forms of medical training. We need to know how to de-arrest folks. We need to know how to communicate with each other when we know that folks might be at risk of being snatched by ICE or might be the targets of some white supremacist non-state violence. How do we get folks to move around, get away, avoid the threat? And people are right now in the phase of skill sharing, right? And so this is taking place at from my observation at various local levels. I know there are questions around how to sort of like expand that and like create something more intentional at like maybe a regional level around that. But from what I've observed, I've seen a lot of folks get together and figure out ways to sort of like teach each other the skills they need to quite literally survive. And so, like I said, like a lot of it's been around sort of learning how to escape danger, learning medical training of various sorts, and then also finding ways to stock up on any supplies that folks need to address their immediate needs. So if we're talking about I'm thinking about folks who are in the reproductive justice movement who are thinking about natal care or sort of DIY things that folks need to take care of themselves or their needs when the state has stripped that right from them or criminalized it. I'm thinking about various medications that folks might need that might get cut off, whether it's due to just the general rollbacks that the federal regime has imposed, particularly through this recent big BS bill that was passed, or something that's more along the lines of the state level, right? Sort of like shutting down rural hospitals. So folks are thinking about ways to how do we create deeper community with more rural communities, for example, so that folks can get what they need. And granted, I don't want to take away the agency of rural organizers because rural organizers are doing a lot of work already. But I think the thing is that there's a desire to be more intentional about building connections between cities, whether they're rural, local, and then ultimately across the region. And so those are kind of some of the things that as of recently.
Right. Maybe one last thing. I mean, I think they're very cool. The cool thing about the event, the gathering on the 21st, is to kind of hear about these same sorts of things in a different part of the world, right? Hear about the conditions, hear about the realities, hear, unfortunately, I think in some cases, some very horrible stories of what it's been like for people to do the organizing in the Philippines, as well as just the response being very similar in the sense of people figuring out how to care for themselves in that mutual aid capacity. What, if anything, have you been thinking about in anticipation for this that you're excited about for meeting with everyone on the 21st? Like what's been your thoughts around it as we get closer to the date?
Yeah, I'm very excited about being in conversation with our comrades in the global South, right? For me, I come from a political tradition that understands that capitalism and colonialism is a global project, and for me, I'm clear that there have been so many counterinsurgent efforts, particularly within the United States, to disconnect folks here who are fighting against the empire from the rest of the planet. And I think what's really exciting about conversations like this is that we're able to tangibly talk across borders um, with comrades who are in the same fight that we're in and draw parallels, to share strategies, to discuss different tactics and create more intentional solidarity, not just in word, but just really in practice through conversations like this. And that's the thing that really excites me about this. We're able to remember that we're not alone in this fight. We're not, those of us that are within the borders of this U.S. empire, certainly not the only ones engaged in the struggle against capitalism, colonialism, and these oppressive forces, because this struggle is global. And so this is just one of those rare opportunities where we're able to talk with comrades across the globe in real time.
Yeah, no, I guess that's the advantages of technology, to use it in these kind of moments more so than what it's used against us a lot of the times, especially the war machine.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. Well, Denzel, thank you. I'm gonna.
My guest today is Jassim or Guila. Lives in the Philippines, in Luzon, the northern island, what they call in decolonized terminology that Ja and his community like to use, the archipelago. And I first met Ja in person back in 2019 when I traveled to the Philippines to do some organizing, to meet with his network and participate in some events that they'd organized and travel around the region. That trip was unfortunately cut short due to the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. but I'm continually amazed and humbled by the work that you and your community, your network do in the Philippines. Could you take a minute and introduce us to who you are, your background in organizing, and what you're doing today?
All right, yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Max, for being part of this, interview. So, good morning from my end, from Archipelago, and once again, my name is Jassim Guila, and my friends call me Ja. I am from Archipelago, or so-called Philippines, and I have a background in creating short documentary films, do songwriting that gives radical awareness about what's happening in our society and environment, and I promote the idea of creative resistance. I also have background in research work, and I am a community organizer. And for 7 years, I have been running autonomous space we call Pirate Studio, where one of the primary work is to promote and share radical analysis and perspectives about deep ecology. I am also the founder of Samalat Advocacy, which is created way back 2010. This is an outer environmental group that work with the community, with the upland and rural communities that promote environmental protection and basic human rights. I am also part of local autonomous network, or LAN. This is a loose network of information shops, activists, autonomous, anti-war groups, environmentalists, faith-based groups, and deep ecology and mutual aid networks, and so on. So some of the things we promote here is decolonization, autonomy, solidarity, environmental stewardship, community care and resistance, direct action, and many more diverse initiatives by the networks. And in the past month, we just created a new grassroots organization we called Mutual Aid Disaster Relief Search and Rescue Philippines. Um, uh, our primary operation is providing relief goods to the survivor of disaster. As you know that even Philippines have a bit contribution to the global carbon emission, yet we are still very vulnerable to the effect of climate change. So we are providing, and we capacitate communities to be prepared and more resilient to the hazards and to take direct action if needed, especially in time of disaster. And we are developing our module where the Philippine environmental situation is will be discussed, and the main objective is to understand and to be aware that about the different destructive activities that's happening around the country, and why it became the drivers of the hazards, and why we become more vulnerable to the effect of hazards. And last, I am currently the organizing director of Blue Earth Defense Global. It is an international organization that is dedicated to defending our only home, which is the planet Earth. And BED is run by a group of volunteers spanning 3 continents, and who have come together through the common love of Mother Earth and to the natural world. So currently, BED has an ongoing campaign here in the Philippines, which is the Defend Manila Bay. And one of the main call of this campaign is to stop the seabed quarrying that is happening in the shore of Cavite. So where hundreds of fisher folks' families have been affected by this activity because the government has approved a 30,000 plus hectares, where they can operate, So this activity directly destroy the marine ecosystem and our ocean, which harms both the marine and terrestrial ecosystem and contributes to the climate crisis we're currently facing. So we become part of Kabitenyong Alyansa Laban sa Seabed Quarrying, or CALSAG. This is a local formation, a local coalition that was created here in Cavite, and the primary work is to stop this destructive activity, which is the seabed quarrying. While our comrades in Canada, through deep sea defenders, they are focusing on their campaign against deep sea mining, which is also a big and serious threat to the marine life and ocean. So we oppose deep sea mining and support the call for a global ban. And our comrades in the United States have different projects and initiatives, such as building community of resistance through the group communities that protect and resist. And you can check our website, to learn more about our group and about our allies. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that background, Ja. It's great to hear that, and I got some sense of these networks, these projects, these campaigns when I was visiting with you and working with you over the years. But CELDF now is partnering with Blue Earth Defense and with some of the organizations and the networks of people you've been working with for years down there in the archipelago to organize this upcoming event. And it's focused on repression and how do we respond to state repression, to vigilante violence and corporate violence against our communities. So could you talk for a few minutes, Ja, about what is the political situation like in the archipelago in terms of threats to organizers and people doing environmental and human rights work?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks for that question. I think that's really important. Okay. So, first of all, the political situation here in the Philippines is not changing. The government is still prioritizing the interests of corporations and oligarchs. Government agencies are functioning based on who is in the position and what their interests. For example, currently, Martin Romualdez is the cousin of President Marcos Jr., and he is currently the House Speaker. So, House Speaker, it is a title of the presiding officer of the highest ranking official of the lower house of Congress and House of Representative, as well as the fourth highest official of the government in the Philippines. And Romualdez is not only a politician, but he is also a businessman and a mining company owner. So, under the administration of President Marcos Jr., several executive actions, legislative proposal, and the aggressive implementation of existing laws have created, which is a strongly pro-mining policy environment. One is the Executive Order number 130, which is more about creating the Mining Industry Coordinating Council. Two is lifting of the moratorium of new mining contracts. Um, then the fourth is the National Mineral Policy Act. And fourth is the legislative push to amend the Mining Act of 1995. So this is very controversial because this legislative is more about lifting the 40% foreign ownership cap. This is the most significant and controversial proposal because it would allow a 100% foreign ownership of mining companies, removing a major barrier for international investors. So that is the main reason why, from land-based mining to offshore mining and the threat of deep sea mining, are expanding very quickly here in archipelago or across the country. And the Philippines, it is important, Max, that people should know that the Philippines has consistently ranked as one of the most dangerous countries in the world for environmental and human rights defenders, particularly those opposing mining, logging, climate mitigation projects, and agribusiness projects. While exact number vary slightly between reports, the scale of the violence is alarming and well documented by the International Human Rights Organization. Since 2012, overall death toll, according to Global Witness, the Philippines has been the deadliest country globally for land and environmental defenders in several recent years. And then Karapatan, or the Philippine Alliance of Human Rights Advocates, and other local groups have documented over 330 killings of activists and community leaders since 2012. Then the International Federation of Human Rights, or FIDH, and its member organization report the similar high figures. And then for the recent year, we just want to highlight the crisis. On 2021, Global Witness reported at least 30 killings in the Philippines, which is the highest number globally that year. And on 2022, the figure remained extremely high with at least 19 verified killings documented by Karapatan and other groups for the year alone. And on 2023, report indicate the violence continued unabated with killings persisting through the year. So the pattern and the context of those killings is they are targeting majority of the victims are from rural communities, indigenous groups such as Lumad, Igorot, because those destructive products are usually penetrating in their ancestral land, and they just want to protect the land, asserting their rights. That's why on the pattern, most of the victims are indigenous people. And second is the peasant or farmer organization, and they are targeted to their work defending their ancestral land, livelihoods, and the environment. The primary sector is the highest number of killings are linked to conflicts over mining, agribusiness, plantation dams, logging, and hydroelectric projects. And then for the impunity, a critical issue is a near total impunity for perpetrators. Investigations are often slow, ineffective, and or non-existent. So state forces such as military, police, and private security forces linked to corporations are frequently implicated, but very few cases result in convictions. And last, red tagging, pervasive practice where activists are falsely labeled as communist or terrorists by state agents, and this often serves as a precursor to harassment, surveillance, legal harassment, and ultimately the extrajudicial killings, creating a climate of fear. So, in summary, overall 330 environmental and human rights defenders have been killed in the Philippines since 2012, and the country has frequently been the global leader in such killing in recent years. And impunity become norms.
Yeah. Yeah, not an easy situation in which to organize. And, this was the parallel, this was the genesis of the idea for this upcoming event, was that the Philippines and the United States are linked, of course, as I don't need to tell you, but many people who are listening to this might not know because history is not taught well inside the United States. But the U.S. occupied the Philippines for 43 years, I believe, up until World War II and the Japanese invaded. The country was a colony of the United States after the Spanish-American War. And there was a national liberation struggle. There was a liberation movement fighting for freedom from the U.S. occupation during that time. And so there's that link. There's also the fact that President Donald Trump is big admirer of the former Philippine president, Duterte. And Duterte, of course, was the mastermind of the war on drugs, the so-called war on drugs in the Philippines, which was a very brutally waged campaign of crackdown on drug users and drug dealers, which spilled over onto many people who probably had no involvement whatsoever in any drug industry, and many people who were just users or addicts who weren't violent individuals but were subjected to extrajudicial killings, other forms of violence, disappearance, torture, and so on. And so we see this parallel between what's happening in the United States right now with rising authoritarianism, not just under the Trump administration, but going back throughout U.S. history. There's a through line of
this repression of activism, social movements, revolutionaries. And it's that trend, that tendency is ascendant right now in the United States. It's gaining power and momentum, and we're seeing it being specifically targeting the pro-Palestine movement, the student encampments that sprung up at universities across the United States, activists who are speaking out in favor of Palestinian liberation and against the Zionist Israeli occupation. And we're seeing it waged against immigrants. We're seeing this xenophobia being leveraged as a strategy. So with these parallels in mind, we wanted to get you together, get Blue Earth Defense, different organizers from the Philippines, our friends from the Highlander Center down in Tennessee, who've been doing anti-racist and movement building work for more than 75 years, and try and get these people together in one room to share ideas, to talk about what's happening, to talk about what's coming next, and also to try and answer the final question that I have for you, Ja, and I know you can't answer this in detail and in depth during this conversation, so folks will have to join the event to hear more detailed responses to this. But the question is, how do we respond to this? You talked about this violence, these different forms of repression, collusion and corruption inside the government, and outside of it as well in the corporate world. How do we respond to this? How do we stay safe? How do we keep each other safe? And how do we continue to organize and be effective in the face of this?
All right. Thanks again for that wonderful question, Max. And I think that's really, necessary. So yeah, to answer that question, first of all, we need to work and to establish our own security culture together with your group and with your community. Having the best practices and protocols for activist work will lessen that risk, because there are no safe in this kind of, field that we choose. The physical, the psychosocial, and cybersecurity are mandatory if you choose to become an environmental and human rights defenders, particularly here in the Philippines. So it is also crucial that we establish a strong relationship with our local and international community, because political threats has no boundaries. No. So building a community based on autonomy, solidarity, mutual aid, cooperation, direct action will make our community more resilient against both natural and political threats. This model, rooted in principle of mutualism and direct democracy, is indeed a time-tested and powerful antidote to both natural and political instability. And I think it's a practical blueprint for survival and thriving in an increasingly unstable world. It empowers people to be the primary agent of their own security and well-being, making the community a fortress of mutual support rather than a collection of isolated, vulnerable individuals. And it is a powerful reminder that true resilience comes from the strength of our connection and our shared commitment to one another.
Thank you for that, Ja. Beautifully said. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more from you, from different members of your community and your networks in the archipelago at the upcoming event. For folks who are listening or watching this right now, the event is scheduled for July 21st at 6 p.m. Pacific time. That's 9 p.m. Eastern time. Or if you're in the archipelago in the Philippines, it's 9 a.m. on July 22nd. So the links to register for this event will be shared in the description of this podcast, this video, if you're watching the video, and we very much look forward to seeing all of you there. Thank you, Ja, for taking the time today to join us and share some about your work.
Thank you so much for all the hard work, Marks, and see you all soon. Thanks, and have a good one. Take care.
I want to thank you for listening to our show and let you know a few ways you can support Truth and Reckoning. First, share this broadcast with your friends and family. leave a positive review via your podcast app. Visit the Truth and Reckoning YouTube channel and leave a thumbs up and a comment. The full scope of the work of CELDF, including this show, comes with a financial cost. So if you're able to make a donation, go to CELDF.org. That's CELDF.org. But most importantly, our goal for this show is to empower you to take action. So the best way you can show your support is to get involved with your community and protecting the place where you live. Thank you very much.